I am introducing you Master Swami Dharma Sumiran. Hello, Sumiran. We'll speak to him about how he arrived at this world and how he lives. Sumiran, please tell us what your name means. My name originates from Sanskrit. Dharma can be translated as path or as source of existence. The word Dharma has a lot of meanings. Sumiran means to recall, to remember. The whole name means to remember the Dharma, or the path, or the truth. The name was transferred from the psychics Osho had assigned after leaving his body. A group of psychics appointed by him who used photos and dates of birth to tune into someone and to give them names. It was about 1997, as I recall, when I made a request for a name to Pune. I'd been doing Osho practices for 4 years by then. I'd been reading Osho's texts, attending Osho groups. After a while, I felt like receiving a name from those psychics this master had left. As I felt, I was deeply connected with Osho. Notwithstanding, he hadn't been in his body by that time. That's the origin of this name. What was your path? How were you heading for it? I would single out 2 periods, one being a period of unconscious seeking that lasted during my adolescence. And when I was a freshman at university, served in the army, and the period of conscious seeking, when I realized I had greater interest in spiritual practices and scriptures, and yet it was a meaningful pursuit. My conscious search began at about 20, having just retired to the reserve. At first, I went in for Chinese wushu and Chinese philosophy. After a while, I had some rather profound inner experiences. That revealed dimensions of life so unique I hadn't even read about. Since then, the intensity of research and self-studying grew dramatically, because it had been an initiation, an invitation to seek not from an external source, but from another plane of the being, as it were. Why call it another plane of the being? Because mostly it was what's generally known as the altered state of mind, when the physical reality was nearly insensible, while attention and perception were registering rather unusual spaces and energies. And sometimes certain creatures who were conscious and living, but not beings of the physical plane. Then I had a 3-month period of nightly encounters of my perception with these planes. Where were you studying, like you say in your first year? Did it somehow have to do with your subject? No, it didn't, though I studied nuclear physics. That showed my interest in how the universe works, as I thought that the study of the universe had to do with the study of physical matter. It was really interesting to me. After my military discharge, I went in for Chinese wushu and read whatever was available in the book market back in the 1989. Books were sparse. There weren't even any printouts available back then. Whatever I could find and borrow from libraries or friends, I did read. So I had some information base, but as compared to the experience I encountered during my altered states of mind, that information was negligible, leaving me clueless about my experience. It had raised many inner questions. I went seeking answers to thenceforth, in a conscious attempt to comprehend my experience. What exactly were you seeking? What questions were you seeking answers to? Since my experience had ruined the image of myself at that time, and my worldview, I was inquiring into what the world is and who I am, because the paradigm of my first 20 years had been totally destroyed. This experience revealed that my conception of the world and myself had no connection to reality. What had connection to reality, I had no idea of back then. Has your search already ended? Yes, my conscious search had lasted 17 years. By 2007, this process had been accomplished with what they call realization in the East. The process itself was quite intense. Almost all my spare time and resource was devoted to the study of this matter. There were books, meeting certain people, teachers, trips to India and Nepal. It was my occupation at some point. I began to conduct seminars and share my own experience. In fact, those were 17 years of my full devotion to the pursuit of the spiritual path. How did you practice? I did pilgrimage trips, met with masters, read the literature, did practices, a lot of them. We tried everything Osho had recommended, and there were dozens of Osho's techniques. At some point, I came in deep contact with the Western psychotherapy and psychology. We established a psychology center in Voronezh during that period. Prior to that center, we'd set up a private wushu school. I worked in those organizations. With time, having worked out many practices of psychotherapy and Osho techniques, I finally settled on the three basic methods for myself, namely monastic zazen, we'd been exercising a great deal once, Chinese wushu, that involved some work with energies and prana, and what's called jnana yoga, that is, reading scriptures, attending satsangs, and meeting masters. These three main lines were at the core of my practice. In addition to that, pilgrimage trips to India, of course, I'd spent there in total 18 months while seeking, which sure was of tremendous help and support on the path. Whom would you refer to as your teachers? Please name them. My first teachers appeared through books, because traveling had been difficult back then, and meeting in person with interesting people. So I hadn't seen my first masters. But had known them by their deeply moving and transforming texts. First and foremost, it was Osho. I'd especially distinguish him because his speech and voice had made the biggest impression on me. It was Jiddu Krishnamurti, it was George Gurdjieff, whose methods were also practiced by us, and Ramana Maharshi. Those four were the first wave of masters, and those books had become available in Russia by 1993. I knew some translators of those books and was in contact with them. Nice folks they were. The second wave of literature followed in 1998, when the books by Nisargadatta and Papaji had hit the shelves. Those two masters had given a strong additional impetus too. At the same time, if we were to speak of then living masters, the first person I used to closely contact, consult and share with during the course of my spiritual path was certainly Swami Yogi Kamal. We'd been friends, keeping company with each other and having common disciples for some while. In one town? Now we lived in different towns, as he often used to visit Voronezh and later we would come across in St. Petersburg. We had some coincidental locations where we were both working with people. So we used to meet, albeit we never came to visit each other on purpose. But on occasions, when we were in one town, we'd always meet and communicate rather deeply. Besides, in cooperation with Swami Yogi Kamal, an Advaita festival had been held. Then I had invited him to partake in the Advaita Congress organized by the disciples of Swami Vishnudevananda Giri in Moscow. Further, contemporaries were... But then again, while not in India, I was meeting with some of Osho's disciples, that is, with those who'd been living with him for quite a long time, or connecting with that master for a short while, and they still carried the master's torch. Many Osho group trainers, both from Europe and Russia, went on touring across Russia in early 90s, and I had seen some of them. And that, too, had left a certain imprint on my appreciation of the path. And the next wave was meeting with living masters in India. It was in India where I happened to have met with a large number of enlightened masters. Some of them were well-known, some less known. One of those well-known was Jaggi Vasudev, Sadhguru. When we first met, he said I was the first Russian he had ever seen. It was then 2002. Amma. Other masters like Thuli, Baba, Aja were less renowned. Most of the masters filmed by Premananda in Blueprints for Awakening, Wisdom of the Masters. The translated version of the film can be found on YouTube. Out of the 16 masters shown there, I had met with the majority of them, perhaps with 12, even prior to Premananda. It sure had been of great help to me too. Will you tell us how could you integrate your research of the world by scientifical and that other method? First, the approach to a study of the interior that was appealing to me was itself rather a scientific approach. There are also more devotional ways. There are ways based on the study and experiment. The latter way has seemed to be closer to my type. So there was no issue of opposite methods for me, just like we experiment on the exterior, observe outcomes, and conclude. In the same way, can we experiment on the interior plane, meaning jnana yoga, that is a self-research, Yes, self-research and Kriya Yoga is by large scientific as well, with its methods. The distinction between religion and science is that religion comes to a point where logic and methodology end and mystery begins. That is, something without causality appears, some non-linear functions. The mind is hence challenged for self-adjustments and agreement on the rules of the game. How can one recognize what might have happened and firstly tell the real thing from a hallucination and secondly regard it as a reason to seek? That's a challenge, a question, because for mostly the world has happened to man. How could he discern if it's real or being hallucinated? One should begin with an inquiry whether the physical world is a hallucination or not. This question was asked and studied by both Western philosophers and Eastern mystics. Further, we come to the term's definitions. What is reality? What do we call illusion? In layman's terms, reality is what can be registered by the five senses. So the sense organs can perceive this object. I can feel it, I can see it, I can smell it, I can taste it. I can hear its sound. Then I assume it to be real. Reality has never been defined this way in the East. They call reality that which never changes in the three states of dreaming, waking, and deep sleep. It never changes in the three times of the past, present, and future. That which is unchangeable in the three states and the three times is called reality in the East. And the quest for this reality is the point of a spiritual path. It seems to be much harder for a European mind to admit the fact that the mystery is real, in a way. It's all getting mixed nowadays, because materialistic thinking abounds in the East now. And conversely, some Westerners get inclined into a more mystical life attitude. So I wouldn't discriminate it strictly by geography. This East-West split used to be more at the times of Kipling, who said East is East and West is West, and never the twain shall meet. Now that they actually got together, got mixed and shaken, a concrete individual makes the difference. An individual may be more of the Oriental type with some mysticism, or more of the Western type. It's all relative. By the Oriental type, we mean one is prone to introversion and reflection. Any Westerner may be like that either. Perhaps the time determines one's way, methods and practices somehow. The type of man does determine one's spiritual path and practices that fit best. I think the practice is best done in natural conditions. What are natural conditions? Those conditions where the body and psyche feel most comfortable and natural, be it a monastery, a family, or a reclusion. The man should feel he's living in consent with his innate nature of energy. He gets relaxed, so the deepest aspects of consciousness are more accessible upon such relaxation, because the man lives in a natural life psychologically and experiences events full of tension and stress. So it's very difficult to relieve stress and go within in such a condition. Therefore, one should first know one's disposition and find a suitable way of living. And then while living this way, one should look for something beyond this way of living, for something more in-depth in the way of living. How should he figure out what his way is? Any clue for him? There were no psychotherapeutists in the East. There were masters. A master is indeed a much bigger phenomenon than a psychotherapeutist. In connection with the above said merging of the East and West, both in geography and information terms, I would recommend that anyone, not only Orientals, should find a master these days. How can one find a master? How can one first realize that, or rather, what is it that shows one should look for anything at all? Why look for someone, for a master? I mean, how does this search even happen? In your view, how does it start off? There are two forces impelling us to leave our abode. It's either the force of dissatisfaction or the force of infatuation. In either instance, what one experiences in life does not suffice. The impetus that kicks him out of his habitual living environment has a certain direction, not pointless. To discern this direction, subtle attention is needed, keen and deep attention. Developing attentiveness to oneself is part of the path. Being attentive, attuned to impulses, attuned to signals, not only mental, bodily, emotional signals, but also to deeper signals arriving from the holy planes. It can be said to be a kind of self-trust then. It's Trust is rather the consequence, because to trust one must already have something trustworthy. If we trusted our instincts, we'd live like animals. If we trusted our mind, we'd live like a society has lived for over 5,000 years yet. It's about what are you going to trust. If we aim to trust the Supreme Self, we've got to learn how to hear it first, how to discern the signal coming from the space of an unconditioned consciousness, from the inner purity. This signal should be certainly trusted and followed. You mean the capability of discerning? Yes, the capability of discerning, viveka. First the ability to hear and then the ability to discern. Otherwise, if we can only hear our mind, emotions and body, our discernment is limited to these three systems. If deeper signals are received, then we can discern heart, awareness, love, and all the rest. What does man aspire to? People tend to seek enlightenment these days. What is enlightenment? Do they all need it? Should it be sought after? Enlightenment is knowing oneself. When we use the term enlightenment, they may say it's not interesting to them. When we refer to it as the knowledge of oneself, a person is unlikely to say he doesn't care if he knows himself or not. It's a prevalent idea of knowing oneself. So people don't seek themselves because they don't care, but because they've been given an image of their personality, and they believe they are that personality. What triggers one's awakening is the beginning of doubts if the image of oneself they designed is true. And the question then arises, if that's a false image, where is a true one? That's how the quest starts off. Once this question is made clear to them, and this clarity isn't erroneous, but based on a true finding that clears that up, that's what they call realization. It looks like transcending the reality as we know it. Generally, for most, yes. The reality as we know it is provided by the five sense organs, and on top of them, constructed by our thinking. If enlightenment is going beyond this reality, why at all study this world then? It's like, why study the jail in order to escape from it? Studying will be necessary. Do you want to get out of jail? If you do, you'll have to study its layout first. It's one thing. Next thing is Papaji, one of the masters used to say, to escape from the jail, you'd better have friends already at liberty helping you out from there. They are the masters, these friends. Exactly, they are the masters in this context. It should be noted that, on one hand, exploration of this space is important because it grabs our attention. Knowing this mechanism facilitates untying of our attention from this grasp. Another point is that this is an opportunity, if we make the analogy between the world and the jail, to settle in the jail more comfortably. To create pleasant conditions for oneself in here. It too needs studying and knowing how this universe works. On one hand, we study it to remain free from being seized by this universe. On the other hand, to allow for the most comfortable and pleasant mode of life in here. Is your life comfortable now? Yes, quite so. Please clarify, after your 17-year search is over, as you say, what's your walk of life on earth now? What's your feeling about a mission of yours? Otherwise, why on earth are you here? If you've known everything, gone beyond, what are you doing down here? The sense of mission is a special feeling, I'd say, and I don't feel it. I have no sense of mission. This energy is manifested on a larger scale with some masters. For example, Osho, Sai Baba, Jiddu Krishnamurti, Gurdjieff were the masters resounding with a certain sense of mission. In the meantime, I like to share what's been revealed to me, and I do so, but without the sense of mission. That's on one hand. On the other hand, like any sentient being, I have arrived here with a number of vasanas, inclinations, and it takes a portion of time up to attend to them and make them happen. The karmic tendencies incorporated in my matrix of embodiment, being energy charges, demand their fulfillment, so I try to discharge them into action. You mean their predispositions from the past? Yes, it's a pattern of energy I've brought in this world. This energy isn't just related to the search for self or to helping others in their search for self. There is such energy. Yet there are also other energies, and less destructive and harmful, those energies are allowed expression if needed. How are you sharing what you've known with others? The best part of my time is devoted to this, except for the rest hours, while I'm just experiencing the tendencies that are not related to teaching others. They can happen, rest hours? Yes, they happen sometimes. I'd like to have more of them, but it's how it happens. As regards the teaching process and knowledge transfer, its meetings, discourses, seminars, video films, books, private counseling, group practices. A typical approach most masters apply to their work. You hold seminars and you've written several books? Yes, in addition, there's a YouTube channel, pages on Instagram, Facebook, VKontakte. I try to utilize all available resources for the purpose of transferring knowledge. What do you do at seminars? How is the training arranged? The range is diverse. Having 3 primary directions of practice, I use 3 main lines at seminars. A line of the monastic zazen, a line of the Chinese wushu dealing with the body, kriya, a line related to jnana yoga in a form of discourses referred to as satsangs in the East. Occasionally, if necessary, We do some Osho's practices, apply methods of the Western psychotherapy. All that is also part of the process and can be adjusted to the group profile and to the objectives we set for a seminar. In this respect, the scope is quite multifaceted. Besides, over the last 13, 14 years, I would often take people on pilgrimage tours to different places worldwide, primarily to India, of course. We came to visit Sri Lanka, Turkey, Israel, Italy. That was in line with my methods, to bring people to places, either to terrains of power, sacred man-made sites, so they could do their practice in special energy fields. Who are those folks around you? Are those practitioners your disciples? Who are they? How often do new guys come? How easy is it for them to enter this unfamiliar circle? Any predisposition for that? People are quite versatile. The audience is not of a certain type. The spectrum varies by age and by occupation in the society. It should be noted that around half of attendants at my meetings are those who themselves hold seminars, yoga classes, psychological sessions. They deal with people as professionals in their domain, involved in the humanities, in alternative education such as the Montessori, in Waldorf schools. So we have this specificity, but there are also folks from completely different areas, called by an inward aspiration to study oneself, and a resonance with me because there are other masters, and people choose them rather intuitively than rationally. Can one master resonate more than another, regardless of the master and the mastership, you know? Yes, that's right. Do people get happier? Do you think their lives improving as they come to you? Well, I suppose since our effort is partly related to studying the world and understanding the way the body, psyche, and mind work, followed by corrective actions to destructive aspects, it surely improves on the zones of psychological, common, and physical comfort. It takes some time and energy. Another portion of energy and time is taken up with the study of the plane that lies beyond personality, body, mind, and psyche, in an attempt to discover this plane in oneself. This plane can make one happy, because happiness is not personal but existential by nature. If one's attention is connected with the plane that's present in everyone, one will feel what we call happiness. Adjusting the manifested aspects like mind, body, and psyche makes one's life just pleasing, not happy. So pleasure and happiness differ. They are both important, and our work is being done in the two lines. Are there any standard rules or a guide to becoming happy? How can you make your life better off? Becoming happy takes the same route as knowing oneself. They join in one line. Unless one knows oneself, one cannot be happy. And for making life more enjoyable, there are psychotherapy, work on the body, and so on and on and on. That's another kind of a plane. Will you please tell about your view if there is a sacred core of all religions where they converge? Do you agree on that point? What's in it as you see it? The point of convergence, where religions meet, is beyond expression. The ultimate source is inexpressible and indescribable. There's also a manifested aspect of the source that's universal. The common plane of all religions that can be experienced include love, the sense of existential freedom, of bliss, of compassion. Every religion comes to the same inner experience on this manifested plane. Something lies beyond the scope of the common experience. It's indescribable and cannot be experienced. That too is pointed at. In fact, what they call realization is the innermost self, and that supreme aspect of life united as one. When the self is linked with the manifest aspect in the form of love, freedom and bliss, this supreme state is called sattvic mind in the East. This manifestation is still a form of samsara, one may say. An upgrade to the absolute plane generally requires that consciousness realize and exhibit the existential qualities of the Supreme. So it's like an entrance door, a gate. I know that people come to you with a various cultural and religious background. Have you ever belonged to any religion? Or perhaps do you belong now? What do the world religions mean to you? From the outlook of past lives, I reckon I did belong to some religions, but never in this life, because I feel quite fine both in mosques and in churches, also in Hindu temples, in Sufi dargahs, and in Tibetan monasteries. I know you'd visit any of those on a pilgrimage. Yes, we would drop in any shrine that seems revered and attractive in terms of practice and self-development. I've never wanted to belong to any religious system in this life, so I haven't belonged. There are places of worship that are close to me energy-wise or aesthetics-wise, but without the sense of belonging. I haven't had the sense of belonging to any religion. I admit I've got a deep connection with Osho, speaking about people instead of traditions. Osho himself didn't represent any traditional religion, being all on his own, as well as Buddha, and Jesus, and all great masters. Well, perhaps not all of them, but many did not belong to any tradition whatsoever. There are masters within traditions as well. I mean, enlightened masters that practiced within traditions, got realized and taught within traditions, including Christian masters. Yes, including Christian mystics, many Buddhist masters. I've got a story like this. I was searching beyond traditions, combining multiple paths and looking for something that would work for me. I wasn't bewildered by this compilation and results. Moreover, it helped me find the right keys. Please share with those who hasn't yet approached you or another master any recommendations how they should attend to themselves. What should they do to become more conscious in their daily life? From my viewpoint, if the inner Satguru awakens, he will take care about where to lead one and how one should live. If one is sleeping, counseling a sleeper makes no sense, because he's asleep and dreaming. Wherever he goes, he remains in his dream. What about being out in nature, listening to music, sitting in silence? Any activities that direct attention to ourselves? It's not fit for everyone. Some people spend their lives in nature like farmers, woodsmen, aborigines, and arrive nowhere. Some people can be the president of a bank and attain the truth like Ramesh Balsekar. Therefore, an attempt to model a lifestyle for bringing one to the truth would be a speculation, making those unfit for such models feel inferior. Because of incompatibility of their natural features with the models. It wouldn't be right to say there is a model of that. What matters more is the striving to know oneself that emerges within. Initially, it's the doubt that he already knows about himself and the world, followed by his aspiration to figure out how it all works here. Having all that in place, no matter what environment he lived in, his consciousness is likely to start to deprogram itself bit by bit. It's not only about this matter, but also about how people should live in general, that nowadays a lot of ready-made solutions and recommendations, like you should do this and do that to be happy, you'll be fine and have a good family and the like. What's your view on advice like this? Are there any rules in life ethics or some other way to go about it? On the one hand, if a sillier man listened to a smarter one, life could be better. Not that the silly one would get smarter. If he should follow instructions, his life could really get better. Better in a run-of-the-mill daily life, not spiritually. There'd be no growing inside. Should he do as he's told to by clever or wise people, he might improve his outer life. Yet, to invoke an inner growth, a self-exploration is necessary. It's important to seek, to learn, to ponder, to feel, to see for oneself. Most masters emphasize this point. They try to arouse some intelligence inside a disciple and then to leave him to himself. What do you mean? Not everyone can be left to oneself and feel comfortable. An intelligent man can. That's why I said you should arouse intelligence first and then leave him to himself. Will he sort it out himself? Afterwards, he'll sort it out himself. Would an intelligent man act in another way? What's the sign of his intelligence? His intelligence is in that he makes choices and decisions from the supramental sphere of inner wisdom. It's not a behavior pattern, it's a decision maker within him. Is it about the action in the moment, about the here and now? It's a common expression now that can be interpreted in different ways. It can be called differently. What matters is that it must work out well. I guess they'd better come over to a seminar and ask about it in detail then. They can ask, but the main point about seminars is practice. It means development of one's intelligence by way of special methods and communication. When we deal with a person who's intelligent or acting from the inner wisdom, not the intellectual function, it activates or it may activate our potential, innate intelligence. That's why Orientals who were in search were always seeking masters. Another way of activizing this intelligence is one's own work with attention, with perception, with the prana energy. Also, the channel cleans, the psychic cleans, the mental cleans, and the body cleans. That's a particular technology to be applied along with an interaction with masters. Generally, this combination has the most potential for a person. The combination of doing certain practices individually and having a master to spend some time with. The more the better. Not for everyone. Any individual has his own life, conditions permitting to do so or not. Not just anyone can cope with the highly intensive work given by the master with whom one spends much time. Thank you, Sumiran. I appreciate it.